Hello, thank you for joining. Today we'll do an analysis of a well-known guitar piece, one of my all-time favorites, Julia Florida by Agustin Barrios, and I've chosen I think appropriate painting. Julia Florida is a barcarolle, which means a boat. It's a kind of a boat song, a traditional boat song from the Venetian gondoliers. So it's the kind of thing you'd hear someone like that guy who's standing on the gondola there singing while you would sit in the gondola and enjoy, soak in the beautiful sights of Venice. So it's a boat song, so barcarolle's got a very gentle rocking motions, generally in 6/8 time, and Barrios was probably most likely inspired by Frédéric Chopin. It's hard to escape this man, Frédéric Chopin. He inspired so many, Francisco Tárrega and Barrios, so two of, and Villalobos as well. Francisco Tárrega, Agustin Barrios, Heito Villalobos, three of our, really key composers. And obviously he's influenced many other composers too, myself included. I've written in the style of Chopin. So just on that note, I will be recording some Chopin very soon, which I'm really excited about. So amazing how it all ties together. So this is Julia Florida. Let me know in the chat if you have any questions. I'd love to know if you have any questions. First things first though, I will play it for you. So I hope you enjoy this rendition of Julia Florida by Agustin Barrios. And by the way, I'm playing this I play guitars by a local maker here in Melbourne, Australia, Roger Lee. And he recently made this guitar. It's an absolutely beautiful guitar. And there are links, there's a link in the video description if you'd like to inquire about that. You can check out the link. So, can you demonstrate how to use rubato effectively? Okay, that's great question. Thank you. I will demonstrate that. Maybe that'll be the first thing. One of the things I'll talk about first. When we study the piece, I'll talk about rhythm a little bit. So thanks so much, because your questions really help direct me as to what to focus on. There's so much to focus on in an hour. There's only so much we can talk about. So your questions will help to direct focus what I look at. So please feel free to leave your questions. I've played this piece probably hundreds of times over approximately 20 years, and it's still just, every time it's so beautiful, it's so fresh, it's so there's always something new to discover in the piece, a new bit of inflection or something, or feeling, or rubato, or something like that. So hope you enjoyed that performance of Julia Florida, and I hope this analysis will help you just understand the piece and understand maybe the process of analyzing music, or the process that I use anyway, which will be a top-down approach. So we'll start with the big picture. This is what I usually do, start with the big picture, the form, structure, keys, and then we look a step down, we go to the phrase structure, and then we go to the harmonies and the progressions and things like that. So that's what we're going to aim to do today. I don't know exactly how in-depth this will be, and we've got a great question about rhythm, so I'll talk about rhythm too, and rubato, and then we've got a very specific question. Fred, you want to hey Fred, yeah, you want to make a start on the piece? Sure, I think you can definitely make a start on it for sure. It's not especially the first section. The first section's not super difficult to play. There's not much barring or anything, but sort of like later on, like in the middle of the piece, it gets a little bit playing in the higher positions and a bit more stretching and that kind of thing. But thanks very much. So yeah, so we've got a very specific question about shifting, I think, to know where the accented notes should be and how to achieve the shifts smoothly. Okay, great questions. All right, so let's dive in then. So let's just get straight in. So, oops, that's not the score. Hang on. Here we go. All right, hopefully you can all see that okay. All right, so here is the score. Now, this is not exactly the edition that I use. It's very similar. This is a great edition by Edson Lopez. I think you can download this online. I think if you Google Julia Florida, you'll find it online. So very easy piece to find. It's I think public domain in most countries, if I'm not mistaken. So where do we start? We start with the big picture, right? Always start with the big picture, because otherwise you can get bogged down in all the little chords in all the trees, not see the forest for the trees kind of thing. So we want to try and develop a big picture. So now, if you haven't watched my video about Adelita, I would recommend maybe after this video at some point watching my video on Adelita, because a lot of the things that I talk about in many pieces, when we analyze a piece, they're found in Adelita. And Adelita is such a short little piece, and there's so much good stuff in that. So a lot of that stuff I'll talk about in this video today. So I will just tell you that we have a 2-bar introduction, which goes like this, setting up the, it's almost like the gondoliers just getting the boat started, and then it goes, and then we start the actual piece, the structure, formal structure of the piece begins. Here we get the A section. We're in the key of D major. We've got the 2 sharps in the key signature there. Now the trick, if you don't know this trick with the key signatures, you take your last sharp, so in this case it's C sharp, and you just go up a step, and that's the key you're in. So if you have 1 sharp, F sharp, go up a step to G, it's G major. When you have 2 sharps, go up a step from C, you get to D major. And if you have 3 sharps, for example, the third one would be on G sharp, so you go up a step to A, it would be A major. Okay, just a little trick, and that works up until C sharp major, all the way to all of the sharps. So, all right, so we have an A section. It's in the key of D major. All right. Now this edition has a nice, kind of format here. You can see these double bar lines there. That's usually a double bar line like that is suggesting the end of a section, and that is the case here. So this is the end of the section here. we go to the coda after that symbol there, when we repeat the A section at the end. So this is now our B section here. And the biggest giveaway there is the key change. You'll hear a change to the key, the relative minor is B minor. Okay, B minor. So you can hear it. Another clue is the A sharp, which is the raised seventh note, the leading tone of B minor, the A sharp. So you can see that they continue for a while there. From starting here, once we hear that chord, so if I play from here, have a listen to when the A sharp comes in, A natural, and then A sharp. That's really what turns us towards B minor. Okay, that happens to be the dominant of B minor, the 5 chord of B minor. That I call that a gateway chord, the 5 chord of a new key. The dominant chord of another key is like a gateway that takes you to that key. It's very simple. And Bach does it a lot, Chopin does it a lot, Barrios does it a lot, Tárrega, Villalobos. Yeah, so we got this B section in B minor, and then basically, this section repeats. You could have some subsections. So you could say this is B1, and then this is B2 here, maybe here. This is B2 because that's the first time ending, or maybe a bit earlier. Sorry, let me put it probably here. We'll put it there. Okay, so this sort of cadence here is the end of the B1 section, and we could call this B2, and that's where we get the climax. Okay, so that's our B2 section. It's quite long, goes through many different keys. We'll talk about the keys in more detail in a second. I just want to get the real overview of this piece. And essentially, we basically end B2. You could say there's a bit of a sort of transition. So sort of a transition section there. So we could say that maybe where we get this chord here, let's say this is a transition that will take us back. So we get da capo al coda, so we go back to the start, up to the coda. So now we go back to the A section, we play up to the coda, and then we go to the coda and end the piece. So essentially the form, if in a nutshell, in the most sort of straightforward distilled way I could try and explain it, is intro, A, B, A, coda. Okay. And the A section is in, let me try and get this a bit larger here for you. The A, excuse me, the A section's in the key of D, the B section's in the key of B minor, and then it goes off into some different directions, and then we go back to the key of D and end. So that to me, that's like a nice, see the forest first. Yeah, that's the forest. That's the big picture of the piece. We have the 2-bar little intro, and then we have the A section where the melody comes in. We're in D major. Then we have B minor for the B section. Lots of drama. It's kind of like a development section almost, right? We go through lots of different keys, which we'll look at in a second. And then we return to the key of D and we end in the key of D. Okay, so that's the big picture form of the piece. So that's what I encourage you to do that too. When you analyze a piece of music, start with the big picture first. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at how much more of a framework you'll get, how much things will make sense when you first see the big picture. Keys and form and keys, structure. What is the overall structure? How many sections can you see? Doesn't matter if you use the right letters or whatever. You can use numbers. You can say this is section 1, this is section 2. Doesn't really matter. As long as you're identifying sections, that's great, okay? But there is a formal word for this form when we have ABA, and that's called ternary form. I forgot to mention too, you can download, I have a free analysis guide. If you go to the web, I didn't put a link, I have so many links in the description. But if you go to the website there, creativeclassicalguitarist.com, and go to products, there's a free section and you can download an analysis guide. It talks you through what ternary form is. You can also watch my video on Adalita, where that uses the same form, and I talk about that as well. Okay, so there we have ternary form. Okay, a very established structure, very, very established. But let's just for a minute, I want to talk about the keys in B2 especially, because Barrios goes through quite a few different keys here. So I want to just outline that a little bit, and then I want to talk about rhythm and answer the question that we had in the chat. Okay, so the keys, we were in B minor for the B1 section, right? B minor. Now in B2, Barrios takes us somewhere different, and he uses this G sharp as a clue. This creates the chord of E7, and now if you know your gateway chords, that's the dominant of A. It's the 5 chord of A. So if you're E7 likes to go to A, and that's something like what he does here. He goes to, oh no, he goes back to D. Sorry, no, he goes back to D. So he goes E7. He uses E7 as a way to get back to D. It's just kind of the cycle of fifths a bit. So E7, and then this is our A7 chord. Now you can see the bass, E, A, and then D. And yeah, I am talking a little bit about harmony, but I'm only looking at very, very key moments to try and figure out what's happening with the keys. So actually B2 starts again in the key of D. Okay, so we're in the key of D, and you can hear that. You can see there's the lack of accidentals, right? Not many sharps or flats going on. So we start to get a sharp over here. That's a clue that we're going to change keys at about that point. But here, I'll play this through from here. So B2, D major. There's the D's there, you feel the arrival. There's the D in the bass. And then here comes the E sharp. Ooh, that's a big change there, okay? So that is the key of F sharp minor. So the E sharp is the 7th note of F sharp, and we're raising it up, sharp 7 like harmonic minor to be an E sharp there. So that pulls us to the F sharp. That's the leading tone of F sharp. The E sharp pulls us to the F sharp. He does it again. He does it again and again and again. Then we get the E sharp again there, the G sharp. That's suggesting that we're still, there's E sharp again, we're still in the key of F sharp minor up until about this point. So we get here, and now I'm here, 41, F sharp minor, E sharp. This is a different addition to what I play. E sharp again, G sharp, E sharp. Okay, now suddenly we get another change here. We get A sharp. It's very unstable at this point. He's changing keys very quickly. He's not resolving as you'd expect. He uses this chord, which you'd expect to go back to F sharp minor, but that A sharp is now the 7th note of B. Okay, so now we get a little hint of B minor again. A little bit of B minor. Now we get G sharp, and that pulls us to the A, and then you see the C natural and the F natural. So now we get the key of A minor. And then that A minor is going to eventually turn into something like A major or A7, which it does over here. That is an A7 chord, and A7 is our friendly good old dominant of D. So that's a good chord to take us back to the A section in D major. Very, very, very good layout of the keys there. So the B2 section, we go to D, F sharp minor, B minor, A minor. Quite a number of keys. D, F sharp minor, B minor, A minor. So I'll put that in my little list over here. We actually have 4 key changes. So we go B minor, then we go D, we go F sharp minor, B minor, and then A minor, and then that eventually turns to, I might put like something, let's see if this, it's kind of like a flow chart sort of thing. That eventually turns to A7, and then that takes us back to the key. You like that flow chart there? It's okay. All right, so that's kind of what's going on now with the form and the keys, right? So that essentially, if I had to summarize that, it's the B section is like a development, and it's going through lots of different keys pretty rapidly, whereas the A section pretty much stays in one key. It's much more stable. It's much more of your, you know, your boat song, everything's all good. You're just on the calm seas. Over here, it's like the waters get a bit rocky, maybe a storm's coming, and then eventually you go back to the calm seas again, go back to the key of D major. So it's telling a story, and that's really what key changes are all about. It's all about telling a story, a musical story, word painting. You can associate different words, moods, colors, emotions, stories to the keys. So that's exactly what we could say. D major, you know, calm seas or something, you know, so calm boat song, you know, something like that. It's almost like a lullaby, you know, it's got this rocking. It's got this beautiful rocking motion. And then when we go to B minor, that's a bit stormier, right? A bit more drama. And then we get the high point in D majors. It's ecstatic, you know, ecstatic moment. But it doesn't last for long. It goes quite gloomy to F sharp minor. F sharp minor was described as gloomy. So I actually should write these down. This is what I like to do is analysis. Every point of analysis should inform our playing in some way. So it's not just writing stuff on the page and saying, oh, this is this key and this is this chord, and what's the next step? What's the point of it? What's the purpose of analyzing a piece? This is part of it. So we can say calm boat song, the start, right? Then over here, B minor, we can say storm approaching. And then over here, it goes back to D major, but it's a high point. So I like the word ecstatic. For some reason, the person on the boat's just, maybe the storm, you know, blew away, and it's now we're back to this beautiful sunshine again. It's like, yes, we've got beautiful, beautiful weather again. We don't have to worry about the storm. But it doesn't last for long, because then F sharp minor comes in, gloomy. And then we get B minor for a little bit, so that could be another emotion. And then we get A minor. So maybe B minor, you know, you could say lamenting, something like that. And then A minor, there's a bit of drama. I'd love to hear from you in the chat. How would you describe this part? And I'm playing it a certain way. So if whatever language you use, I can try and interpret it that way with the language that you use. So hey, thanks. Right. So what do you think that A minor section represents? What sort of mood is it to you? I mean, maybe it's not so dramatic. Maybe it's much more melancholic, right? If I put that word in, I would play it very differently. I'd play that very differently to that. If it's melancholic, quite different, okay? So yeah, let me know in the chat. I'd love to get what, I know there's a bit of a delay between me speaking and you typing in the chat, so, but I'd love to, maybe you need to think about it as well. I know you might have to think about it, or maybe not. Maybe you've got nostalgic. Oh, Fred, that's a great word. Nostalgic, that's a bit of a bittersweet, you know, sort of, yeah, it's definitely the sadder spectrum of nostalgia, I think. Nostalgic, very good. I guess we get this, that chord's quite nostalgic. It's a half diminished seventh chord. That's really nice. There is a bit of a, you know, questioning kind of, and then we get very questioning for the transition. That's great. I like nostalgic. Greek for remembering pain. Oh, that's awesome. There we go. Okay, remembering pain. That's great. Remembering a painful time, maybe, to be more, if you want to make it more specific. So, you know, I mean, honestly, you could end your analysis here, and that's a lot already. That's a fantastic overview of the piece. You've got each section, you've got the mood, you know, the emotion of the sections and the keys. This is a very, very good point to get to. If you can arrive just at this point, what are the sections, what keys do we have, and then what is the effect or the imagery, what is the key or the music implying, what sort of, you know, imagery or emotions is the music implying, right? So that's a fantastic point to get to. And then we return to Calm Boat Song at the end, okay? The A section coming back. So you can see it's quite a story. Calm Boat Song, storm approaching, B minor, ecstatic, the storm is past, back to D major, but then gloomy, maybe the clouds come back. It gets, you know, very cloudy, grey, dark clouds come. Gloomy, and then you're sad, lamenting. You know, I thought this boat ride would be, you know, full of sunshine and I'd just enjoy myself, but yeah, it's making me remember some bad times in my life now. Yeah, it's pretty emotional. It's music, right? That's music. It's like, don't take the emotion out of it, you know? Put the emotion in, put the story in. So nostalgic, remembering pain. That's great. And then we transition, and then maybe the skies clear up and we're back to our Calm Boat Song. And in this case, we have a happy ending in D major. So that's our story. Okay? So now I want to talk about rhythm quickly, because that was a question we had. So I mentioned that there's this like lilting quality, it's almost like a lullaby. and that's due to the meter. So we talked about key signatures earlier. That's something, you know, an important piece of information on the score. Another important piece of information is the time signature. As the time signature has a meter to it, which is basically a series of accents of strong and weak beats, and it's our responsibility to bring those out. Now the composers will usually help to support that in certain ways. For example, by putting chords on the strong beats, or putting bass notes on the strong beats, or longer notes on the strong beats, and then quicker notes on the weak beats, and that creates that sense of meter. And so 6/8 is something like that. If we're talking in like these are symbols that are sometimes used in poetic meter, in poetry. And so we've got strong, weak, weak, strong, weak, weak, strong, weak, weak, strong, weak, weak. We essentially have a 1 and a 2 and where the 1 is a bit stronger than the 2. Okay, so we have 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 2 and 1 and 2 and okay, so it's really important to establish that the regularity and the regularity of the tempo, meaning that it's not erratic, you know, you're not going like that, right? It's not speeding up and slowing down. There's a regularity to the tempo, to the beat. The beat is regular, and then there's also a hierarchy in the beat, so that you have a clear sense of strong and strong, but not as strong as the 1, and strong and strong. So if you establish that, it's very helpful. A couple of ways to do that. One, you can grab your trusty metronome. I use an app called Soundbrenner, which is free. Awesome metronome app. Obviously there's many others out there and you might have your own metronome, but I like the apps that have a function where you can set the subdivision. So I can go and I can tap 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1. It's about 40, and I've got that. So it's strong, weak, weak. I can actually set it so that it'll go strong, weak, weak, strong, weak, weak, strong, weak, weak, strong, weak. So that's at 40 BPM. So now this is, I think, a trick to how you can use the metronome but still have the music sound musical. Because if you set the metronome and it's all equal beats, your playing will sound more metronomic, you know, more mechanical. But it's that accent, that hierarchy of accents that creates a musical effect in the playing. You know, it's very important. It has a lot to do with many things, with the phrasing, with the tempo, eventually the rubato that you use. It really really brings the music to life quite well. So that's you know, when it comes to using rubato, that's your starting point, and then when you've got that established, then you can start to, it's much easier to push and pull the beats, you know, to linger on notes or to slow down or to accelerate, but you always are maintaining, or you're always coming back to that regular meter again. So I think it's really important to establish that first. And then when it comes to certain things to do with rubato, this will segue, I think, nicely to the next topic of phrasing. So phrase structure is another really important part of analysis of a piece of music. And once again, if you look at my analysis of Adalita, you'll see that there are two main types of phrases. We have parallel periods and we have sentences, or I should say we have periods and we have sentences. Those are our two main types. And again, you can download my analysis guide, go to the links, any of the links, most of the links in the video description, and then go to products and then free, and you can download the analysis guide there. Because I talk about in that, it outlines what a period is and what a sentence is. So we have our 2-bar intro. So that's just like, a 2-bar intro. That's just its own phrase. But it's actually important to realize that is a 2-bar intro. And that's where rubato starts to come in. Oh, we're getting Christmassy now, red and green. So because we know that's the end of the intro, we can. And now the edition says poco rallentando, which means slow down a little bit there. So that marking's there. But if that marking wasn't there, and as we'll see, there are other places where you could slow down, at least subtly, and it's not indicated in the score. And I don't think it should be. It shouldn't always be indicated in the score, because if you try to indicate every bit of interpretation in the score, it's just ridiculous. Like, it's too much information. So it's very similar to reading, reading a text, and we read the words and we know the meaning of the words, and we know when sometimes there's punctuation, but then it's not telling us that there's a lot of information missing. So when we know the phrase structure, we know when to take time, and that's one of the important aspects of rubato. So we have periods and we have sentences. The thing in common with both is that the number 4 is really important usually. So usually phrases will revolve around the number 4 or 8. Okay, so usually if we count 4 measures, it will probably reveal something to us. Sometimes it's 8, sometimes it's even 16. But I think, let me scan through this one. Yeah, so we're starting 2 measures in. So my mathematics skills here need to come into play. So 2, and then over here is bar 10. That's 8 measures, right? So that's an important point, because what do you notice happens after 8 measures? The melody from the beginning comes back again. So we get this there at the start, and then that comes back here again, and then it'll go off into a different direction. And I'm guessing that's going to be 8 measures. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, pretty much. Plus we get a few extra measures there to transition us to the B section. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Phrase off, end of phrase, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then we have a couple of extra measures to kind of wind down and to transition to B minor as well. So that's actually 20 measures in total, including the introduction. So 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. Right? So like something like, it's not quite 5 groups of 4, but it's still a number that's divisible by 4. It's 2 plus 8 plus 8 plus 2, right? 2 plus 8 plus 8 plus 2. That's kind of, we have these 2 extra measures at the end. We have these 2 extra measures at the start, and then wedged in between that we'll have 8 and 8. So it's highly structured. Music is mathematical, and it is ordered, and it is very often symmetrical, and very often recurring, series of numbers of 4s and 8s and things like that, and patterns and all that sort of thing. It is, and that's, when you learn to compose, that's a really important, especially important point when you learn to compose and realize that there's so much structure. Music is highly organized. One of the definitions of music, and there are several that I really like, but one of the more like dry kind of scientific definition of music is organized sound. So once we start to organize sound, it can start to become music. And the music that we listen to, like pieces like this, is highly organized. So we have what's called a parallel period here. So a period is when we have a question and then we have an answer. So the question is 8 measures long. It will usually end on the dominant, which it does. It ends on an A. A is the dominant in this case. And then the answer will usually end on the tonic, on the 1. And that's the case here. It ends on the 1. Now, a parallel period is when the question and the answer mirror each other. They start off with the same music, the same material. So that's what we have here. We have about 2.5 to 3 measures of the same material there. Yeah, about 2.5 measures. So those 2.5 measures are essentially copied and pasted over here in the answer. So that helps to give unity. We hear that melody comes back, like, I just heard that before, that's nice. It's not giving you too much information. Parallel period. Now, the interesting thing about this phrase structure, maybe I'll skip this because there's so much to we're almost running out of time and I haven't even talked about phrase structure yet. Anyway, let me know in the comments, is this all making sense so far to you? Can you picture how you could maybe synthesize and apply this information yourself in the pieces you're playing? I'd love to know, if you counted in a piece that you're playing, 4 measures or 8 measures, do you think you'll start to find some patterns of phrasing? And now why it's important, I want to go back to why it's important from a performer's point of view, is because at the end of a phrase, we should phrase off. We should take a bit of time. So at the end of the question, we can take a little bit of if I play from measure 9 here. And then we start again. And then same with the end of the answer, and that we do have that here. We've got the pocoral written there. You could just about write the same thing here, pocoral at the end of the question, and then we come to the answer. And then this also tells us, it gives us some information as to what is the phrasing to begin with, because I've said this many times, guitar music does not have phrase markings in it most of the time. There are some rare exceptions where you do see editions with phrase markings. It's very rare. So if there was a phrase marking to this piece, it might go something like, for the A section, it might go something like that. There are 2 bars there. Now you can see why there's lots of lines now. Let me use another color so it sort of pops out. Otherwise it's hard to distinguish all these different colors. So phrasing will be in purple. So we have the first 2 bars as a phrase, and then we have the first 8 bars all the way to there, and then we have the next 8 to 10 bars. We can go all the way to there. So they're pretty long phrases. So that's going to influence a lot of things: your tempo, your momentum, your rubato, your the general feel that you have. I've pushed the music kind of all the way to there, to that point. And maybe, phrasing is down to interpretation. Barrios didn't leave phrase markings for us. So it's down to interpretation. So maybe you want to do, instead of the whole 8 measures, maybe you want to do 4 measures, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then another 4, something like that, right? So that would sound like... I like that. So that's like, let's say this is a full stop or a period, and this is a comma. And then we basically will probably get the same thing again. 3, 4, and then we could take a comma, a slight breath there. 2, 3, 4. Now, interestingly, I felt like phrasing, and you can certainly use your feelings to guide you a little bit, but I felt like that chord, that's the D chord, the final chord of D major, and then it sort of felt like it went into something new. And then this is now its own little, it's almost like an outro to the A section. Like we have a little intro to the A section, and then a little outro to the A section. And so, see, it's worth, I think, careful consideration as to what is the phrasing, and it's worth, I think, marking it in, because it will have a dramatic effect on many aspects of how you play the music. And I think you'll start to understand the music. You'll see the sentences, the words and the sentences of music when you start to look at the phrasing. Now, because of time, I can't do this for the whole piece, but I would encourage you to do that. If you, whatever piece you're playing, or if you want to continue that with this piece, how would you phrase the rest of the piece? That's something I'd encourage you to think about. So that leaves us to talk about our final topic, which is harmony now. Harmony. Okay. So even when it comes to harmony and chords, I don't want to necessarily think too much in isolation. I like to try and see larger patterns if possible. One of those larger patterns I've pointed out, which is, for example, the parallel period. The question ended on 5 on the dominant, and the answer ended on 1 on the tonic. That's a sort of larger framework. It also is creating expectation. Like there are some chords that you'd expect to occur in a given key. In the key of D major, you're going to expect the D chord. You're probably going to expect the 5A chord. You'll probably expect G, which is the 4 chord. So those are the primary chords, 1, 4, and 5. So 1, 4, 5. We expect a lot of those. D, G, and A. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this is an analysis and what's called a canvas that was done by a member of the Creative Classical Guitarists. And I just have to say how blown away I am by members of the Creative Classical Guitarist. What he's done is he's mapped out the whole piece here. The key changes, the harmonic progression with Roman numerals, which makes it easy to transpose, by the way. So 1 in the key of D will be 1, but if you wanted to transpose it to the key of C, for example, 1 will be C and 5 will be G. So you can see that a lot of the chords are 1 and 5 chords. 1 5 1 5 1 5 1. There we get a 4 chord, 4 6 6 2 5, and then 1 5 1 5 1 4 5, and then here we get a couple of unexpected chords there, and then a 4 chord. So I just want to show you that to say that if you come to harmony with a bit of expectation, like what chords am I expecting will happen, it can make the whole process a lot less overwhelming, because otherwise you feel like there's just this sea of chords and endless possibilities. You look at a chord like, oh, it could be anything. But really, if you know what key you're in, the probability is that you're going to get 1 and 5 chords a lot, and you'll get a lot of 4 chords, and you'll probably get a lot of 6 chords, and 2 4 6. Let's put it that way. So in a bit of a hierarchy, a lot of 1 and 5 chords, that's like the most, like, let's say 70%. And then the next in order would be 2 4 and 6. That would be like, what did I say? This was 70%. This would be like, maybe that's too much. Maybe that's like 60%. And then that's like 30%. And then the remaining 10% would just be like weird chords. That, right? So, and we've got most of the chords, 1, 2, we're missing 3. We have 4, 5, and 6. So most of our chords are there. So that's kind of like, I would start from that point. Next clue is, now notice how I'm not just like going into the chord and saying, oh, it's this chord, and I'm trying to, hopefully this helps you take away some of the like overwhelm that you feel, because I was there. I exactly know how that feels, and I've seen it in so many students. They just feel overwhelmed. But usually when I present frameworks like this, it's less overwhelming. So think about that kind of hierarchy of what chords to expect. And then another really helpful thing is to look at the bass line. Look at the notes in the bass. You can see we've got lots of Ds at the start. So it's probably, those chords are probably D chords there. I need to use another color because this is getting crazy colorful here. What should blue? Let's use some blue. So we've got D, we've got another D, D, D. Okay, then we get F sharp there. Now if I look at that chord, okay, next we get G. So that's probably our 4 chord, G. Right, so it's like D, 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 something a little different. I'll go through that in a minute. And then we get G, and then here we get B, maybe B minor. Here's B again, which is our 6 chord, B minor. And then we get another B, and then we get an A. So most of those chords fit into our expectations there just by looking at the bass line. But we do need to make sure that we're identifying the chords correctly. So let's do that. So there is another thing. Now I'm going through a lot of sort of frameworks here. So the first framework is expectations, which means 1 and 5 mostly, and then 2, 4, and 6 would be the next. Next thing was the bass line. Just look at the bass line. That will give you some clues. The final thing is something called harmonic rhythm. Harmonic rhythm. So harmonic rhythm means the rate at which the chords change, the speed at which the chords change. This is important because chords usually change at a fairly regular rate. In this case, the chords are changing mostly at the dotted quarter note or the dotted crotchet level. So what I mean by that is that these 3 notes here that constitutes a dotted crotchet. That is one chord. And then these three, that's a dotted crotchet there. That constitutes another chord. Right? Now, did we say analysis was easy? Because looking at all these markings, it's like, wow. There's lots of layers, right? We're going through a lot today, very, very quickly, condensing what normally is done in weeks or months into like an hour here. So I hope it's not too fast and it's like we're not covering too much stuff. But yeah, so harmonic rhythm, okay? So he's established his harmonic rhythm. That means most of the time through this piece, the chords will be a dotted crotchet long, or the harmony that will change at the rate of a dotted crotchet or a dotted quarter note. So that gives us another sort of pattern, another expectation to look out for. We can start to group. If I circle the notes like that, that's kind of what I'm expecting. Those will be our chords, right? So now how do you know what the harmonic rhythm is? To begin with, that can take a bit of, right? You can feel it. Hopefully you can see the patterns a little bit. So I could just continue circling it like that, and most of the piece will unfold like that in terms of how the chords are changing. And that's where, when we go back to our wonderful analysis by David Reynolds, that's where we have this, that's like a dotted crotchet long there. It's a dotted crotchet again. And so most of the chords are changing at that rate. Okay, so those are the three tools I would encourage you to think about when you're analyzing chords. Think of the expectations, 1 and 5 being the most common, the most frequent. 2, 4, and 6 will be next most frequent. Then look at the bass line. That will give you a clue. And then look at the harmonic rhythm, the rate that the chords are changing. Hopefully you can feel it, you can see it. Hopefully it's clear. But yeah, that's a framework. And then I guess the final thing is, when it comes to actually identifying chords, stack in thirds, or stack notes in thirds. This is now where we're getting to, the nitty gritty part of analyzing chords. What I might even, tempted to just delete all of this. Maybe what I'll do is I'll duplicate this copy. I'll duplicate the copy, and then I'll clean up the score, okay? So just give me 1 second. Let me know if you have any questions while I'm doing this. I'm sure there are questions, and never think there's such thing as a dumb question or a silly question. Any question, if you've got a question, someone else is thinking it too. Okay, so alright, so I'm just cleaning up the score. Here we go. So we can do our chords. Here we go. Let's do this. Alright, that should be nice and clean. There we go. Nice and clean now. Okay. Alright, so we're looking at the bass line. We're going to have our harmonic rhythm. Thinking about our expectations. Lots of 1 and 5. There's the bass line. And then we also want to stack in thirds. So if we have these first 3 notes, for example, D, and then A, and then F sharp, I need to stack them in thirds so that I know what the root note is. So if I go D, E, F, G, A, D, F, A. So if I put that F sharp in between, wedge that in between, that's how I come to know that it's a D major chord, because the notes are stacked in thirds. Now this one is a little bit trickier. With A, we've got C sharp, and we've got G. A, C, A, B, C, C, D, E, E, F, G. So we're missing an E. And that's how we know that it's A7. That's an A7 chord. I can't go into, because it takes too long, describing. Please check out the technique bootcamp, because that's where I talk about the types of triads and the types of seventh chords. So this is a major triad plus a minor seventh or a minor third. So it's a dominant seventh chord, A7. That's D and that's A7. And that's how I was able to find out, because I stacked those notes in thirds. We essentially get a repeat of the same thing. So it's D and A7 again. And that's why David in his analysis wrote 1 and then he wrote 5, 7. Because D is 1 in the key of D and A7 is 5 in the key of D. And so I would encourage you, I know it takes sometimes a bit of extra, thought and effort and stuff, but I would encourage you to put these Roman numerals into the score, because it gives you, what it's telling you is what I call the function of the chord. D can mean anything. D, what does that mean exactly? It's a D chord, but it's just a D chord. What is it? There's no function or framework that it's fitting in. But when you say it's the one chord of D major, it's got a function. It's the tonic. It's the one chord. A7 is the fifth chord, D, E, F, G, A. It's the dominant. It's got a function. So then another advantage is you can transpose. So you've got a more abstract view of the harmony. You can say, well, if I transposed it to C, then that would be C, and that would be G7, and so on. So I'd encourage you to put the Roman numerals in as well. Now this is quite an advanced piece, so it's not easy to analyze Julia Florida chord by chord. It's not something I'd recommend a beginner, someone who's new to music theory. I wouldn't probably recommend you try to analyze this piece. So this is for the more advanced, people who are a bit more experienced with harmony. So for those who are advanced, I'm going to, or if you are more new and you sort of, if this helps you, what I'm going to do is I am going to, in the next 15 minutes, I'm just going to mark out all these chords for you. Okay? And then the non-chord tones is another factor. That's a great point in the chat. Non-chord tones, yeah. So right here we've got a non-chord tone called an upper neighbor. This one, and again you can refer to my theory bootcamp. I talk about neighbor passing tones. That's called an upper neighbor, and that's an upper neighbor as well. Okay, so that would be another great layer, is to circle the passing tones, try to label them if you can. That's just called a neighbor tone, or a passing, no, neighbor, sorry, that's just a passing, regular passing tone there. It's just filling in the stepwise motion. So that's another upper neighbor there. But let's go through. Okay, so this is a D chord, that's A7 again, and that's D and A7 again. Lots of 1-5, 1-5 that establishes, right? And that's, I like to try to see the larger groups. I'm saying D, A, D, A, D, A. I'm seeing that, saying that's an establishment, establishing D major. Then we're going to start veering off away from that. Now we get a D with F sharp in the bass. And then he raises the fifth, and the A becomes A sharp, and that becomes a D augmented chord. So D, F sharp, and then D augmented, and then that resolves to a G chord here. I won't do the Roman numerals for now because that's just going to take too long. Okay, so that's a G chord. He adds the C natural to it. That becomes something like a D7 chord, going back to G with B in the bass. That's one rare exception where the harmonic rhythm changes it covers two whole beats, one whole measure, and then we go to B minor, still B minor actually, that's quite a long B minor, and then the G sharp comes in. That's an E7 chord, which is the dominant of the dominant, the 5 of 5, otherwise known as a secondary dominant. It goes to A7, passing note in the middle. I think that's something like a incomplete neighbor. No, I can't remember what kind of passing tone that is off the top of my head. Anyways, A7 there. Okay, so that's the harmonic progression of the question. And then we get the answer now. So the answer, we start with the same D, A7. It's a parallel period, so it's the same 2.5 measures as the first, as the question. And then that's D slash F sharp. And then that, now he adds the C natural, that becomes D7. So I'll play that. D7 is the secondary dominant to G, so that goes to a G chord. That's a C sharp diminished chord, C sharp E G. That's an F sharp minor chord. I'll play this for you. There's an E minor 7 chord. So it's C sharp diminished, F sharp minor, E minor 7. It goes back to F sharp minor, which is the 3 chord. We saw that in David Reynolds' analysis earlier. F sharp minor, back to G. Most of these are in root position, by the way. Most chords, which is nice. For you CCG members who might be watching, this is a cadential 6/4. The chords would be the 1 chord in second inversion, followed by the 5 chord in root position, followed by the tonic chord in root position. So again, establishment, and then adventure, and then cadence. It's like a typical pattern of harmony. Establishment, adventure, cadence. That's what we get even at the question. Establishment, adventure, cadence. Right, and same thing in the answer. So that's the intro, the question, the answer. Then we go to B minor. So we go to A7, D, A7, very similar to the intro. And then D slash F sharp. And then we get a secondary dominant to B minor, F sharp major. F sharp, A sharp, C sharp. Was that? There's that upper neighbor. He keeps using that upper neighbor a lot, right? Upper neighbor passing tone, right? They're pretty epic. We're going to analyze. We're analyzing every chord of this piece. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll try to answer them if I can. Okay, so now we're in the key of B minor. So now we get. Where did my pen go? Let's try that again. B. Ooh. Hang on a second. I think my computer's like freaking out because of all the annotation. What's going on? Hang on a second. Oh, that's not. It looks like my computer's frozen. I might have to end it because I can't. Let me see if I can fix this here. Okay. Okay. So if I save that, can I write in it again? Yes. Okay. So it's funny that, you know, in a document when you have lots of annotations, it can really like take up a lot of RAM or something, you know. So I think we're back. I think we're working again here. So we're in the key of B minor. So B minor. This is a beautiful C sharp half diminished 7th chord. C sharp half diminished 7. And then he repeats those two chords a little bit. B minor, C sharp half diminished. I could have just written like a ditto sign sort of thing. Then back to B minor again. So we get this resolution, tension, resolved, tension, resolution. Now this is a bit of genius here because he temporarily goes to the key of D again, but then very quickly we go back to the dominant of B minor, F sharp, and then that goes to B minor here with D in the bass. We get this D, F sharp, dominant of B minor with D in the bass, and then we get that's a beautiful C sharp diminished 7th chord, C sharp diminished 7 / E, and then this is B minor / F sharp. Lots of inversions now, which makes it very unstable. So B minor / F sharp. And then we get back to C sharp diminished again, half diminished 7th. Very interesting how he keeps calm. He's using that chord a lot in this section. G minor. This is like an altered, chromatically altered chord. With G minor, we would usually expect G major, but we get G minor. Really beautiful. That B flat. And then I think that's something like B minor. It's just simplifying it a bit. And then we get E minor. Again, C sharp half diminished 7th. That's C sharp, E, G, B. This one is with a G in the bass. And then we go to F sharp. There. And then there's the F sharp, the dominant of B minor. And then that goes back to B minor. Okay, so then we go to the second time bar. Okay, so here is the second time bar, E7, A. We've already talked about this in relation to the key change. B2 comes in. We're in the key of D major. So that's what that D at the bottom's there for. So this is an F sharp, interesting chord, F sharp minor 7. And then A7 / C sharp. It's an A7 chord with C sharp in the bass. Another little tip that can help you figure out chords. See what I did there is I played all of those notes together, and that was, you remember the harmonic rhythm, dotted crotchet, dotted quarter note harmonic rhythm, and then so I played all those notes together, and then the next dotted quarter note we get all of those notes. So I played them together, and it helps me to sort of clarify what might the harmony be. A lot of the times guitar music is pretty much like a chord shape with the left hand, and then it's arpeggiated with the right hand. That's pretty much what's happening in most of the cases in this piece. Then we get an A chord there. There we go. So there's a D, D major. D becomes D sharp diminished 7, fully diminished. We've got a C natural. That is a secondary chord of E minor. And that's where we go next. We go to the E minor. That D sharp is the leading tone, pulls us to the E. And we go back to A. And we go to D. That's a 7, I should say, because of the G. Interesting though, because we get a D major chord, but he puts B. He puts the B, really emphasizes the B. It's almost like a D6 chord. And then here's where we get the E sharp. So that's something like C sharp 7. So that's the dominant of F sharp minor. That's the key we're in now. F sharp minor. Dominant of F sharp minor, and then that goes to F sharp minor. So C sharp 7, F sharp minor. I don't even know what to call that. That's maybe E sharp diminished or something. It's some kind of diminished chord anyway. And then he kind of does that again. Yeah, F sharp minor, E diminished, which is the 7th chord of F sharp minor, E diminished 7. So the D natural, and we've got the E, the G sharp, so it's E sharp, G sharp, B, D, E sharp, G sharp, B, D, right? Like that. And then F sharp minor again. E diminished 7 again. I'm picking up on this pattern too, by the way, where Barrios repeats 2 chords successively. You know, he's done it here. So F sharp minor to E sharp diminished, F sharp minor to E sharp diminished, F sharp minor to E sharp diminished. Now he did that earlier here. B minor to C sharp diminished 7, B minor to C sharp diminished 7. So a couple of times, and then also at the very beginning, D A7, D A7, D A7, D A7. So that's a sort of like harmonic, almost a harmonic motive that Barrios is using that provides unity through the piece. One of the factors. There's other factors like rhythm and upper neighbor tones and other factors too that create unity in this piece. So E sharp diminished, and then he does it again. F sharp minor, E diminished 7, 3 times. No, is it 4 times in a row? It's a real statement. 4 times in a row. And then, I think that is our infamous augmented 6th chord, if I'm not mistaken here. D to B sharp is an augmented 6th, so it's an augmented 6th chord, which is in the key of probably F sharp minor, which would be F, G, A, B minor. Yes, it is. It's like if we took B minor, which would be B, D, F sharp, B, D, F sharp, and then we put it in first inversion, like that, and then we raise the root note of the chord, and we also had the 3rd below the B, which is a G sharp, so it's a French augmented 6th chord. French augmented sixth. Very rare. I've probably seen less than a handful of those in guitar music. And then that's a C sharp major chord. So we're still clearly in the key of F sharp minor, but then now we change. Now our framework is in the key of B minor. So now we have A sharp diminished 7. He's using a lot of diminished chords. He's changing keys a lot. That's what contributes to the storminess and the drama and all that. A sharp diminished 7th. So then he's going arriving on B minor, beautiful resolution, and then chromatically altering those notes. So this chord now becomes B, D, F, A. So that's B half diminished 7th. And that leads nicely to A minor. That's a chord very commonly very commonly used in A minor. That's like the 2 chord in A minor. So then the next chord is the dominant of A minor, E7 slash, and I should say that is slash A, by the way. E7 slash G sharp. There. And then we get an A minor chord. So we get the E7, A minor. This is absolute genius what he's doing. So now we get B half diminished 7 slash D, and what he does again, he repeats those 2 harmonies back to back. Oh, I should keep that there. B half diminished 7. That's that pattern again of repeating 2 chords, A minor and B half diminished 7th, and then A minor and B half diminished 7th. And then we're almost at the end of our analysis. And then he does this beautiful progression to transition us from the B section, the end of the B section, back to the A section. All this drama needs to be, the steam needs to be let out, let's say. And so these chords kind of achieve that. So we get A minor, that's A7 slash G. So already that's suggesting D major. That's F, A, C, E, F sharp fully diminished 7. F sharp fully diminished 7. And then that's G7. Very interesting chords here. And then that's A7 slash E. And that's pretty much it, because then we go back to the A section, and then the coda is just 1 5 1 5 1. It's just D, A7, D, A7, and then a massive D chord with this beautiful harmonic arpeggios all the way to the very end. We did it. Every single chord of Julia Florida there, analyzed. I went through that extremely quickly. Hopefully that's of some use to you. Obviously you can always repeat this video and slow it down and pause it and take screenshots and whatever will help you. But yeah, as I mentioned, this is a pretty advanced piece, so I wouldn't recommend analyzing that if you're like a beginner or even relatively intermediate with harmony. Instead, I would suggest analyzing things like Carcassi pieces and Carulli's pieces by composers like that, because their use of harmony is a lot more straightforward, and I think you'll have a much easier time identifying the chords in pieces like that. So But another option is you can always join us on the Creative Classical Guitarist, and you saw some of the incredible work where David Reynolds had done, where he had analyzed the entire piece of Julia Florida, the whole structure, and put all the Roman numerals, the whole harmonic analysis, and he had started to actually compose a piece based on Julia Florida. And that's one of the other wonderful outcomes of analysis. So analysis can help you to understand music more deeply, but it can also give you stepping stones towards creativity. Mozart himself said, "There is not a famous master whose music there's not a famous master whose music basically he studied." I can't remember the quote, my brain's like fried. He studied the music of the famous composers of his time industriously. That's what he said. He studied music of the famous composers of his time industriously. So if you study music industriously, if you study like what we've done here today, maybe it's, you're more of a beginner and you do the same sort of study, but for a, shorter, more, basic piece, that's fine. But it's that industrious study of pieces that will unlock. You can read as many harmony books and do all the exams of, harmony theory exams and stuff, and it will help. It's don't get me wrong, it's definitely a help. It helps you get some of you understand some of the language that's, used in theory and that kind of thing. But what will really help is just getting that, pen to the paper, and just like what we did today, just trying to figure out what's going on. So yeah, whether you're a more advanced player, if you're more of a beginner with theory or with playing, especially with theory, I'd recommend you come. Have I lost connection here? No. I recommend you come on board to the Creative Classical Guitarist. There is a link in the chat there. There's different memberships you can choose from, and it's just an amazing community. We've got members. I mean, you can see a lot of the compositions on my channel by different members, and they just keep coming. Recently we had members compose pieces using seventh chords, using dominant seventh, major seventh, minor seventh, diminished seventh. They composed pieces, like short pieces, about a page long, using these chords, and they're absolutely beautiful. I'm going to share them really soon. I'd like to record some of them really soon. They're gorgeous little pieces, and for a couple of those people, it was their first ever composition, and it's just remarkable what people can do the first time. When you start to understand some of the structures and the frameworks behind composition, you can then compose. It's just like the logical outcome. It will just happen. It will flow out. So I'm also recording a album of Chopin's music. So if you'd like to support that, you can pre-order the album, and you'll get a special ticket to an event where I'll explain some of the influences of Chopin, and some of the guitarists who arranged his music. We'll explore some of those guitarists who arranged his music in around Chopin's lifetime and shortly after Chopin's lifetime, including Francisco Tárrega, and the composers who were influenced by him as well. And anything else? Any questions? Let me know in the chat. And it was a lot of fun. I love analysis. I don't know if you have this, hopefully you learn to like analysis too. If you don't, thanks for joining. Thanks guys in the chat. Fred, your name, there's the other person in the chat, your YouTube sort of name comes up. I think, is it Nigel? I think Nigel in the chat. Fred, Nigel, you've been great. Anyone else, if you have questions, if you're watching the replay of this, please leave in the chat your questions. I do, I always read and try to respond to most questions and comments. And this video is the result of a suggestion from a viewer. So if you have any topics you'd like me to cover, any other pieces you'd like me to analyze, if you want to learn more about composing or harmony or improvising or arranging or sight reading or whatever it is, please let me know and I'll be happy to explore that. So that's what I'm trying to do each week, pretty much around the same time here in Australia. That's Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. now. Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. I also have a concert coming up, Spanish music. Oh, I also have a concert. Maybe I'll put this in the live chat here. If you go to my website, danielnistico.com, you'll see some of my upcoming projects, and I'm doing a concert this Sunday here in Melbourne, Sunday night, and the information is there on my website. So if you're in Melbourne, I'd love to see you there. And also, final thought, if you're interested in these guitars that I play, they're made by a local maker here in Melbourne named Roger Lee. This is his newest guitar, 2024, made like just recently, and lattice braced in the style of Greg Smallman. There is a link in the video description. If you're interested, you can inquire about this, or inquire about getting one made for you as well. They're just beautiful instruments. This one has an elevated fretboard, beautiful back and sides, beautiful binding, very, very playable instrument, very responsive, so highly recommended if you're looking. It's, I think, great to support local makers as well. So anyway, I think I'll wrap it up there because it's been a marathon here of an analysis. Thanks so much. I hope this was of some help, benefit for you, and I hope to see you again next time.